Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman. I'm here with my friend and trusty producer, Max Kerman. Max, how's it going?
I'm doing great.
We're also here in studio, all three of us, since he had a baby, our pop culture aficionado, Shane Christian Cunningham. Shane, how are you doing?
Good.
You know, I was thinking about that whole segment where you asked us how we're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like, Bill Simmons doesn't do that. They just get right in the conversation. So listener poll, should we stop asking each other how we're doing? Because it's sort of a pointless
I'm the
exercise.
worst at answering that. And I actually get mild anxiety when someone asks me how
Really?
I'm doing.
Well, here's the thing. When I listen back to it, I'm like, oh, I don't mind it. But I wonder if it's boring for the listener.
Well, you guys never give me like a real answer.
We never give you a good answer.
I'm horrible at it.
Yeah.
Any artifice, I'm not good at.
Yeah. It's true.
So no more fake shit.
Yeah.
Okay, today on the show, guys, we are talking to Brent Hodge, who is a documentary filmmaker. He has done I Am Chris Farley, the Chris Farley doc. I believe we've talked about it on a past episode. Yeah. We have, not even knowing that Brent Hodge is a Canadian filmmaker, would then eventually be a guest on our show. He has a documentary out right now called Freaks and Geeks. The documentary has everybody in it. It has Judd Apatow.
Paul Krugman.
Paul Feig.
Paul Krugman's is an economist.
Paul Feig is the director of Bridesmaids.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
leave all that in. That was good.
Yeah, that's great. So Paul Feig and Judd Apatow, they are the guys, the brains behind it. It's really Paul Feig's life, but they have everybody in it that's been in that show. If you haven't watched Freaks and Geeks, go back. I think it's like 18 episodes. It only really lasted one season. It was this juggernaut. It was magical. So many people came out of it that became super famous, like Seth Rogen, James Franco, Jason Segel, Linda Cardellini, Busy Phillips, Jason Schwartzman, who appears in this documentary. We will set all that up a little bit later.
You saw it in theaters.
I did. I went to the screening. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But before we get to that, what the hell has been going on? Max, good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be all together.
This is weird.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while.
Audio-wise, it must be such a relief for people listening.
Yeah.
No Colin.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I missed you, Shane.
I missed you too.
Yeah, so you're back at work for good?
Yeah,
you made that
to
joke last
reuse
week.
the same joke.
Until I get laid off. Yeah, I know. Things are good.
You're doing the biggest show of the summer right now. You're in
Yeah.
the middle
The
of that.
rally.
The rally. So if you haven't got tickets for it, it's June 23rd in Hamilton. There's over 21,000 of your closest friends are going to be there.
How much can we, what's considered a sellout in this case?
I think...
I was going to use the Steve Martin joke, but I knew you would.
It was on me and Shane both watched the Steve Martin short thing that's on Netflix right now. It was like their live show, and they had a really funny joke. And I texted Shane immediately where basically Steve Martin's like, oh, we're so happy to be here in South Carolina. We came into the lobby, and there was this giant picture of Marty and this giant picture of me, and right underneath it said sold out. And I was like, how rude.
So I was going to say what's considered a sellout besides you, of course. But I knew Mike would call me out on my plagiarism bullshit.
Because I texted him immediately, and I go, how have I never heard this sold out joke before?
Yeah.
Like, have you ever heard that joke?
No, but I've heard variations on it.
Sure.
It's like somebody accused... I don't know if it was Kiss or Kanye West, one of the two. It's like some people said we sold out, and I said, yeah, damn right, we sold out every night of the tour.
Oh, there you
Like,
go.
I've heard variations on that.
All right.
But it's by far the biggest show we've ever had. Bud Stage holds about 15,000, and Cops show had 10,000 people there. So we've already doubled it, and yeah, it's been really exciting. We've been planning every little detail. Like there's like a flea market in front of the stadium between 1 and 5, which I think Mike on Much podcast might be making an appearance at.
Yeah, are we announcing that now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So yeah, let's do it.
Go for it, Maxie.
Yeah. So the Mike on Much podcast will be, maybe recording live and selling some merch in the plaza in front of Tim
Wait, we're
Hortons
not
Field.
recording live from there,
Could
are
we? Why not?
If you want to swing by.
Let's do a segment.
Okay, cool.
So for our listeners, there's this a place called The Market that's just outside of the rally where you're doing your show at the
Free and open to the public.
at
Yeah.
Tim Hortons Field. And yeah, Manager Ash is like, do you guys want to because a lot of listeners have reached out. They said, hey, we want to get merch. How can we get merch? And really, our operation's so small, it's kind of like out of the back of the car at this point.
Yeah.
So we're gonna roll up with a car full of merch, and Shane and I will be there for most of the market. I don't know when we'll get there, but
Yeah. Yeah. Stay tuned. Follow us on socials
Yeah.
for all that. Mike on Much.
I
Twitter,
still need a
Instagram.
sweatshirt.
Oh yeah, I just found my sweatshirt. It was in
People
the
love
van.
those things.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah.
It might be a little hot that day, but we got baseball hats and T-shirts.
I don't even have. I have a hat. I have the Mike on Much hat.
Yeah.
I do not have our own merch.
Yeah. So stay tuned for more details on that. So yeah, it's been really fun. There's just been a lot of we've kind of trying to finish recording. There's just been a lot of band stuff going on. I saw Hereditary though, which
Hey,
is
No.
don't talk about it because I'm probably going tonight or tomorrow. I don't want to hear shit about it because this is sitting at 95%. It's like the new sort of buzz movie, and I'm very excited to see it.
Okay.
Can we find out if Max was freaked out?
You can answer that question.
I was freaked out.
Did you walk away with like a? Because you know I don't read reviews. I'm not as extreme as your
Yeah.
father, who he won't even watch a trailer.
In trailers in movies, he closes his eyes and puts his headphones on and blasts the music really loud, like a crazy person.
So I won't read a review of a movie that I want to see before I see it because I don't want to be tainted.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. I was in a mood after the movie.
Okay.
Where I didn't want to really talk to anybody.
Wow.
And was just like kind of grumpy. I was kind of angry at Lauren for bringing me there.
Well, she messaged me and she told me that she told you it was an action film.
Yeah, she kind of tricked me into
That's
going.
how she got you in?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was weird because we actually saw a movie a couple days before that called The First Reformed. Have you heard it? It's an indie movie with Ethan Hawke.
Oh yeah, it's,
I might get that
it's Paul
name wrong.
Schroeder, the guy that did. He wrote Taxi Driver, and he did the one with Lindsay Lohan and the porn star James Dean.
Oh, right, yeah.
The Canyons.
The Canyons.
Yeah.
So now this is his kind of big comeback, but it's been received really well.
Yeah.
It's like, is Ethan Hawke like a priest that loses faith, a crisis of
Yeah,
conscience?
that's exactly what happened. So basically, I don't know how much I should tell about the movie, but there's some environmental. It kind of gets political, and there's sort of like the fate of the world, and people having these existential questions about like, what are we? This is probably a movie you two shouldn't see because it's like, what am I bringing my child into the world? Like, what is the world going to look like in 2050?
That's what Hereditary is about?
No,
This
no.
is the.
sorry.
Ethan Hawke
This is the
movie.
Ethan
Right,
Hawke movie. So 2 days ago, 2 days before that, we'd seen that movie, and it put Lauren in the weirdest mood because Lauren has had those thoughts. I'm sure we've all had those thoughts. About,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you know,
constantly.
if you want to have a kid, it's like, and you know, Antarctica is melting, and there's all this like change in the environment. What are you bringing your child into?
Oh, like when our kids are our age, what is the world going to look like?
Yeah.
What
Will
kind of
there be a
opportunity-
world?
Honestly, seriously.
Yeah, and like, is it an inherently selfish thing to do, et cetera, et cetera? And she's had that thought before, and this movie touches on all those things. So she was in the weirdest mood for like the full next day after seeing that movie, and then we saw Hereditary, and then I was in a very weird
What
mood.
scares you more, like real political problems and climate change, or like a horror film?
The political stuff doesn't bother me quite as much. I'm sort of like, you know what, we'll see what happens when we get there. Or like, you know, humans are resilient and people can get creative. And like, it's hard to predict exactly. I mean, there's a very good chance we're all fucked. And I appreciate that. And I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with it, but I get it.
You're not losing sleep over that.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's like, you know.
But you're losing sleep over ghosts.
But here's the thing.
Sleeping with the lights on.
What I will say about Hereditary, actually, I don't want to say
You can't say anything.
Okay, I won't say anything more. Is it gave me stress in a different kind of way.
Okay, 1 to 10, give me the stars.
Okay, out of 10 as a movie, as a piece of art, that movie was like a 9.5 out of 10,
Great, can't wait.
and I enjoyed it 1 out of 10.
Wow.
You know,
So would you recommend it?
I'd recommend it.
All right.
But if you're a real scaredy cat, don't go.
Max is trying to take your pop culture corner here, Shane.
Well, let's face it, I've never really occupied that space.
You never did it one time.
You also saw Imagine Dragons.
Oh yeah, I went to Imagine Dragons with my niece. You know, I'm on full-on uncle duty. This week's been crazy for me as an uncle.
You said on a recent pod that you wouldn't be able to have any sort of relationship with mine or Shane's child because of your uncle. How stressed out you are by your uncle duty.
Well, it's true, and my sister listens to the podcast too, so I have to watch my
Does
words.
she really?
Yeah.
Oh, shut up.
Oh yeah, yeah. She actually. Did I send you the screen cap? My
No.
sister texted me after the podcast where you said the nurses were giving you,
Viva.
We're giving you
Yeah.
FIVA. And she said, tell Shane it's totally ordinary to do skin on skin, and Brandon, her husband, did it, and it's really important, and keep up the good work.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, two, what happens is a waiter comes in, and not a waiter, I
It
guess.
sounds like a joke setup.
He's just the guy who works there,
Like a nurse?
Like an orderly?
an orderly. That's what they're called.
'Kay.
He comes in, he takes a food order. So I'm like, and then he just leaves. He takes her food order, and then so you don't get food
So you're just sitting there in your house coat with the baby on your chest
with no food.
with no food.
So don't have the embarrassment I did, because like 2 or 3 times I still got tricked thinking every time, of course, I might get a meal.
Yeah, you're so hard done by.
Yeah.
So I went to Imagine Dragons with my niece Emma, and we had a great time.
Is Emma a big fan? Was there a reason it was that
Yeah, she's
band?
11, and Imagine Dragons are a big band. And you know what's funny? You hear Imagine Dragons songs all the time, and they're on every award show. I've never personally loved their music. There's a couple songs I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool song. I totally understand why they're a massive band. And the show kind of won me over. Well, actually, here's the thing. The guy comes on stage, the singer, Dan, And he didn't used to be shredded ripped, but now he looks like Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
My Instagram feed was all people at that show just posting images of him shirtless.
Dude looks like John Cena or something. It's crazy. Like, he comes on stage, by the way, first song, there's no shirt. Like, it's not like there was a
Worked up a
reveal
sweat.
where he was like, so, and I was like, man, this guy's, that's a ballsy move, right? For a pretty earnest, sincere rock band. A lot of these songs are about like overcoming the odds and dealing with your personal demons. I think there's a song called Demons. But it's all really positive. But then as the show progresses, you kind of appreciate they have so many big songs. Everybody's singing along to every word. And his backstory is really interesting. He's a Mormon, but he has all these fans that are from the LGBTQ community that have been writing him saying,
Please take off your shirt.
please take off your shirt. I'm so horny for you. And
Give the people what they want, Dan.
and so he did. And the show was great. No, and so he's actually taken a stand in favor of the LGBTQ community, and he has been basically an ambassador for the Mormon community to the LGBT community, and he's put on a massive summer concert last year and again this year coming up in Salt Lake City, where everyone's accepted, everybody's welcome.
And isn't this in direct conflict with his faith, though?
Yeah, and so I think there's an HBO documentary coming out about it, like next month,
Yeah.
or very soon, about him dealing with that.
Being the bridge.
Being the bridge, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it kind of made me really like him a lot more. And then like as the show progressed, I was like, damn, he doesn't look so goofy. He looks pretty cool. Like, when you start to kind of like a guy, you're like, kind of like he's wearing Vans and like Adidas socks, like in sweatpants. I'm like, at first I just thought you were a dumb bro, but and then he had this whole thing about mental health. He's like, there's a stigma in our society, and it's that people who have depression are weak, but 10 years ago, I sat across from a therapist and I was diagnosed with depression, and I was able to do everything I ever wanted. And I was like getting chills as he was saying it. So anyway, it was a cool show. I took some notes.
I was going to say, what'd you pull from him? What are you going to nick?
He went into the crowd all the way to the lawns at the Budweiser station.
Wow.
Second song.
Do you think the people in the good seats are like, where the fuck are you going? Like, we paid all this money.
And he's gone. Yeah. No, I think he wasn't. He was only gone for. He never came back after the second song.
Did the whole show there? That would be awesome.
And then right after this podcast, I have to go to my other niece Ellie's soccer game or something. I'm playing soccer at 2:30.
I've played basketball with you. We're on a softball team.
Yeah.
I've never seen you play soccer.
I'm pretty bad at soccer.
Yeah, it's not a good sport for me either.
So, listeners who might have missed last week's episode, the Shanestravaganza,
Which, shockingly, you listened to.
Why do you say that?
Well, Mike and I had a conversation of, will Max ever listen to it? And we were like, do we think he ever listens to it? And we were kind of like wondering. And I was like, well, I think he listens to some interviews, but I definitely think
I listen to every interview.
Okay.
I don't listen to it, and I don't always get them on the review. When you send the review link,
Yeah.
there's like a usually a less than 24-hour window between the review link that Justin has to listen to and then it going live. Sometimes, but I always listen to everything.
But I thought definitely he's not going to listen to this one.
No, well, I did two things you asked. I listened to your Dak Shepard interview with Talib Kweli, which is amazing, which I recommend listeners to check that out.
It's right up your alley.
Yeah.
When I'm listening to it, I was thinking about you the whole time. Actually.
Yeah, he's actually a good he's good at kind of feeling both sides. Dak Shepard is, but not to get off track. What the hell is that sound?
Sorry, yeah. We're recording this at my place right now, and I think they're doing construction like 2 places over.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All good.
So we'll apologize, but I think our listeners, it won't be too prevalent because we're up on the mics.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
But the interview with Nirvana the band was awesome. And you know what's funny? So as listeners know, I know Jay McCarroll, who's the star and creator of that show. I've run into him. He lives, I think, around the corner from my Toronto place. I ran into him at a coffee shop a few months ago. And I know Jared Rabb, who's the director of photography. He directed the Whistleblower video. So I've known people on that crew for a long time, but I never watched the show. After you told that compelling story about your cheap brother-in-law, Jake, not wanting to part with his money, but him giving you $20, I said, man, that's a convincing way to get someone to do something for you.
Yeah.
So I bought it on iTunes last night.
And you've watched 3 episodes.
I got through the 3 episodes, and it's really, really good. And I highly recommend people check out the interview. Actually, listen to the interview first and then watch the show. So a couple of questions I had. Number one, I don't think you addressed it. The fire on Queen Street.
Yeah, I think we
Did we
did talk
talk
about
off
it.
mic?
We did talk about it. I had to cut a lot out of that
Sure.
interview. I went
Yeah.
long.
That was the part where you're like, and that fire was so awesome. You
Yeah,
guys are
yeah,
the best.
Yeah.
Because they did, and they have this amazing special effects guy who they work with, who they praised quite a bit more than I left
Wasn't
in
a
that
real
episode.
fire.
Okay.
It wasn't real.
It looks so
but
real.
it's that guy's one of the best in the business at making things make you question things. Wait till you get more into the season. You're going to be blown away.
Okay,
by
cool.
stuff.
Okay, that was good. So I recommend people check out the interview.
Yeah,
on
if
that
you're a
show.
fan of Nathan For You, you're going to love this show.
Yeah.
And even if you're not, you still might like it.
So check out that episode. That was up last week.
Could I just, and feel free to take this out. This is more of just a point of curiosity for me. I noticed you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt right now.
Yeah.
Did you take the bus down here?
I rode the bike share.
From Hamilton?
No, from Toronto.
Okay. When you take the Go bus in the summertime,
Yeah.
do you think it's ridiculous how cold they crank the air?
Oh yeah. Sometimes I enjoy it. I've never really.
Really?
Yeah. Why is it? Was it freezing?
I have to wear my Summit Ice Nathan Fielder jacket every day to work, even if it's 100 degrees out.
Because they air condition the bus too hard.
And this is my, I hate the word pet peeve, but this is my pet peeve in the summertime. They think you want to be freezing in the summer and so hot in the wintertime. Can we not just regulate the temperature in every building we go to a normal state? Because when I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, I'm freezing. And when I'm not, I'm too hot. I just want to regulate temperature in everything I go. And I'm sick of the Go bus.
Hey, you know what? There's a new PC government.
Right?
You should see if you can get on Ford's. You got to get a job.
It's a problem. I see. I rode the bus with your brother today, Mike, and
Greg.
he had the same complaint.
Really?
Yes. And I see people who don't take the bus on the regular who don't know, and they're shivering. Movie theaters used to have this problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut that out.
Okay. Anyway, cut that out.
I don't know what percentage of our listeners take the Hamilton Toronto Express Go bus where they're going, I really relate to what you're
I'm sure
saying."
buses
the
all across the
overall
world
point
are doing
is
this.
valid.
Let's get it together.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, today on the show, like I said off the top, is Brent Hodge, who directed this new Freaks and Geeks documentary. I went and saw it at the screening, and it was really cool because it was a packed theater. It was at the Hot Dogs Theater on Bullard here in Toronto. Man, it was there were moments where I was tearing up in the doc because you're with a bunch of people and they're all, they really relate to Freaks and Geeks. It really hits people in a visceral place. So it was actually a really, really great doc and really fun to revisit it all. And then obviously just for historical context, insane how many people went on to be super successful as part of the Judd Apatow sort of Paul Feig tree.
So I have a confession for you, Mike.
Hit me.
So it's my job as the producer to help you prepare for interviews, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I used to have a pretty good routine of managing all my tasks because, as you guys know, I'm a busybody. I usually like to do 15 things in one day, and each thing usually takes about 10 to 30 minutes long. Anything that requires real concentration, I'm very bad at. Ever since manager Ash came into my life, I feel like I've gotten worse at.
She coddles you.
She coddles me. She's too nice to me.
She's been prepping the questions.
Well, I'll get to that.
Oh, did I bust your punchline?
Whoa.
Wow.
So I was. So I even it's to the point where I get her to send me to-do lists.
Yeah.
So she'll send me a to-do list in the morning, and I'll kind of work through it. But basically, I've been coddled, maybe too much. So I knew this interview was coming. I was thinking about the Freaks and Geek stuff, and usually it takes me about half hour, 45 minutes to sometimes longer to think about questions and to whatever, and then send them over to you. It escaped me, and I didn't prepare. So it was the night of the NBA Finals. The night before the interview with the dude.
Yes, right.
And you come to show up to Kensington Market
Yeah.
to see the game with me and my dad.
You and your dad are hanging out at Kensington.
Yeah.
In that place.
Trinity Common.
Trinity
Cool
Common.
place. You show up. I think you might have mentioned the interview the next morning. And I go to myself, fuck. So then.
Is this audible or in your mind?
In my mind.
Okay. Hold on. Okay.
And so I go, okay, I just got to take a phone call. So then I go outside, and you probably didn't notice because you were watching the game, but I was probably outside for 25 minutes on the phone with Ash, who's a huge Freaks and Geeks fan, who knows the director.
Yeah, that's how this
And I was
happens.
so I just called Ash in a panic. I was like, Ash, this is the most irresponsible I've ever been as a producer. I'm really sorry. I know you got fucking 1,000 other things to do right now, but I need your fucking help right now. And so we start working through all this. And she was super fucking into it. And so basically I'm typing furiously on my phone as I'm thinking. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna send you this ramshackle shit. It's edit it, fix it up, and send it right back to me so I can send it to Mike as if I had created the whole thing myself. So then about half an hour later, I'm back inside watching the game. The questions come in. The questions are amazing. They're way better than my questions. Or they're improved. So at midnight, I send the email off. I'm feeling like a fucking champion because I'm like, I came through in the clutch, right?
I can't believe this.
So here's the kicker, is that I missed a phone call from Mike because the interview was 8:30. I missed a phone call from Mike at 7:45. And then he sent a text, hey, I never got the questions. The fucking email didn't work. Yeah. And so you had to wing it anyway.
Yeah. Well,
so basically, and I sent a screenshot. Like the questions were sent at 12:01 that day. But so there's a record of me sending questions. It wasn't like, I guess it didn't go through. When people make that shit up. It actually, but then there must have been an issue on your end with the email server.
Yeah,
or
it
something.
didn't come through. I went in there. I always have kind of a loose idea of what I kind of want to do anyway. And I was really into the film and really into Brent. And it ended up being a long interview, as you hear. It's like almost like half hour, 40 minutes, just because I enjoyed talking to him so much. But it is so funny that you were confessing this to me because we're watching the game. Me, you, and your dad. It's game 1 of the NBA Finals. And you're like, I got to go out and just take this call. So then me and your dad, Mike Kerman, are just hanging out, talking like, where do we think LeBron's going to go after this? And I'm like, yeah, Max has been gone for a while. It's like a half a fucking hour. And then you were doing the questions.
Yeah, which didn't even get sent anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, there you have it. There's the truth.
I like the truth.
Will you ever rely on her again for that, you think?
Well, she's way better than me. Yeah,
they were great. It's for what it's
here's
worth.
The thing.
To Manager Ash, when I did read them after I got back to my desk, I was like, these are great.
Yeah. And but again, just another example of her coddling me. So maybe I should just be aware of that.
Was it awkward being left alone with Max's dad?
Not at all. He was a great hang, and he really likes basketball and like storylines, like with the players.
And my dad like a lot of dads here, like they like hanging out with younger people.
Yeah,
getting out of the house,
Yeah, we were having a good hang.
Yeah. Imagine he put on those big headphones and just sat there.
He doesn't want to know the outcome of the game.
He doesn't want to ruin NBA free agency. He's like, I just need to experience as it happens. No rumors.
It was a great time. Okay, so for our listeners, before we get to Brent, thank you so much for tuning in every week. If you're new and you're just a huge fan of Freaks and Geeks and you're here to listen to Brent talk about his documentary, then please give us a listen. We've had so many people, over 100 episodes. We are on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio app, and of course YouTube if you want to stream it while you're sitting at your desk. You follow us at Mike on Much on Instagram and Twitter. Check all of that out and settle in for this conversation with Brent Hodge. You guys ready to do it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Did you guys do anything after the screening last night?
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Did you go hard? That's so funny. I actually met up with, I do this podcast with Max, because you guys know Ash, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And we were watching game 1 of the finals last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we were like, we were with him and his dad, and we were like, we'll just have a couple beers, and then like...
Boom, yeah.
What'd you guys do?
We went right across the street, Insomnia.
Oh,
and stayed until Insomnia. Yeah. We stayed until late.
My wife and I went there actually for a drink right before the doc last night.
Cool.
Yeah. So I was just, like I was saying, when you guys walked in, the doc's great. I loved it. My wife loved it. Yeah, it was like a packed house.
Freaks and Geeks, you do not have to work very hard to get a crowd. There's already a crowd. Like, there is people that have been wanting answers to this show for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And here they are. These are the answers.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're going to get to Freaks and Geeks in a bit, but I was fascinated because you got the question last night during the Q&A, like whether you were a freak or a geek in high school.
Yeah.
And you said neither, that you were like a hockey guy.
Yeah.
So your sort of high school experience was just like...
Yeah, grew up in Canada. I'm a West Coast guy, and just played hockey like most people. Nothing out of the ordinary in high school. One of those experiences that most kids go through, where there's maybe some traumatic events, but most are pretty good. You got friends, you're popular, and I think that's the thing with Freaks, is that it relates to anyone. It relates to everybody who went to school. Whether you got picked on, or whether you were an outcast, or whether you were just part of the crew, I think a lot of people can relate to that show.
Yeah, like every experience on the spectrum is sort of represented in that show, and you can feel it with all the characters. Okay, so you're playing hockey, you're sort of regular popular kid. How do you then get into film?
This is weird. I didn't get into filmmaking until I was 25.
Yeah, well, I saw you had some acting credits.
Yeah, a few, yeah.
Okay, but I mean, so you clearly had an inclination toward like entertainment.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved like this idea that you could like make up a script and make up a world and want to do that. And it's funny that we've gone into like journalism, but pop culture journalism. I just love pop culture, and I love, Yeah, I love this idea that film. This always outdates me when I say this, but YouTube had just started.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, man, we can make these videos, and you're making them with your friends, and then eventually you realize, like, wow, this little cool hobby of yours could be a career. And it could have been skateboarding, it could have been this, it could have been anything. I went to business school, and I just knew I wanted to run a small business, and this was the one that I picked.
Okay, so just like naturally entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting to me. So you're saying it could have been anything, but then you chose this one.
Yeah, I think filmmaking, especially film editing, came super fast.
Right.
I sat down with a guy that I met just at a coffee shop, and I said, "Do you make movies? Can I like watch you one day?" And I sat down with him. He was doing an NFB film, and he's like, "Try editing," and I just got it. I was like, "Oh, okay, you cut it, you paste here. This is pretty easy. You bin things." Like it just came really fast. Same with the camera. I was like, "Okay, yep, no, this is pretty good. Aperture, I get it." Like it all just sort of worked. And then documentaries kind of came to us. It wasn't like I fought too hard to get into that world. Just felt they were coming to us. And then since then, yeah, it just sort of skyrockets. It's weird how you look back to deciding how you started something. It's like most of the time you just started doing it because it was really fun.
Right.
And it took up time. You're like, yeah, that's it.
I mean, were you like a film head? Did you go to movies all the time, or were you kind of just a normal pop culture consumer?
Yeah, I was a normal pop culture consumer, but I started doing my homework once we got into the doc category, I should say. Once we were doing films and started going to a few film festivals, I feel like I did 5 years of work in like a year. Where I started going like, oh man, I got to watch some of these old films. I got to watch Werner Herzog films. I got to get into this. And Morgan Spurlock was a huge influence when we first started. Man, what has he done? What's his older stuff? And, kind of going back in like the archives of people's work to understand where they came from.
So how do you get financing, say, for your first doc? Like, how do you, like, for people listening, how do you just decide to do that and then find the financing? Do you do it yourself?
Yeah, this is where the business degree really helped me kind of getting into entrepreneurship. Like, there is a way to find funding for anything. There's a way to make a business out of anything. People always say that documentaries you can't make a business out of because it takes 7 years to make it or 10 years to make these things. Like, well, do they have to? Can you make one that's 1 year? Can you do one that's on a band? Can you, who would pay for that? Where would it go? And you sort of like start to question where you can get these things from. But the first one we did was with CBC.
Okay.
We knew there was a regional fund where you could sort of access money based on doing a British Columbia artist.
Yeah.
So we did it on Said the Whale and Dan Mangan. And we knew we could kind of access money that way, and then it would be a TV show, and we'd get credits on TV. And then we pushed and kept pushing. And then we got fluky with a few where you do them with your own money, and you hope somebody picks them up. There was this new thing called Netflix that picked it up, and it's you just sort of have to stay on the pulse. It's interesting to think that we were kind of on the pulse when YouTube started, and then on the pulse when Netflix started. You're like, wow, I gotta. You sort of have to stay on top of that. But with documentaries, like, man, the avenues to where you can put these now have totally changed. It used to be CBC, NFB, maybe Knowledge Network, Bell, a few places. That's it. Now it's the Hulu's, Netflix, A&E, you name it. There's tons more places to put it. And I think it's, just even showing what happened last night in Toronto, like Hot Docs Bloor Street Cinemas is packed for a documentary. Yeah. That was a huge success. That's fun. So,
well, you win back-to-back Leos, I guess, kind of pretty early on. So you start to see success. So you're encouraged. You're like, this is working. Was there a moment where you went, shit, this is a career that like I can actually do this for long term? Or did you always sort of have that outlook? You seem pretty confident in that. It's like, hey, we can make this work.
I saw a business model for sure, and I think it was acquisition based before, which is like doing it with your own money and then selling them.
It. Yeah, sure.
Kind of, and just if you can keep doing one more of those, then you're allowed to keep making the next movie. So I think it was right from the get go, but some movies you might lose money on too. You always see that. Like there's movies I don't know how good this new Star Wars is gonna do. Like there's movies every day that lose money, but you take a risk on them and you try. And the thing with documentaries, they don't cost a crazy amount to start. So you can start 10 at a time and maybe only 2 kind of follow through. So far we haven't had to do that, but
right. And how do you meet Morgan Spurlock?
Morgan Spurlock came through a friend. He just, I feel like if you start making movies, that's the only thing you talk about with people around you.
Yeah. And
then they realize you make movies. Like if you have friends who are in bands, you're like, that's my friend. He's from a band and you should go see him. And a couple of friends knew that I was making movies and constantly making them. And they ran into Morgan one day, said, you got to meet this Hodge guy. He's always making movies.
Yeah.
So, and Morgan too, he decided he wanted to meet filmmakers and he wanted to help filmmakers. And he really helped get our first film going, our first feature doc called A Brony Tale.
Yeah.
Which is about middle-aged men who like My Little Pony.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my first one out the gate. And I think that, when you have like a really, I don't know what to call that film. It's like when you have a really catchy title to a film.
Yeah.
Like it's about men who might like My Little Pony. You will get a crazy audience to want to watch that. Like regardless of how it looks or production value or anything, just the fact that you have that as a film.
Well, just the elevator pitch, like you just summed up. Right. That's the hook right there.
It's it.
Yeah.
And that's like any business. That's like any entrepreneur for any product that you have. It's like this is your like your like Shazam wipe, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Here it is, and does it work? It's magic. And so you have to sort of sell that. And that was our coming out the gate. That was our first one, and it really got a great crowd. So you kind of build off of that.
I ask this of people a lot with their careers because I think being in entertainment is like such an unconventional sort of career in the way that it's not a 9 to 5, nothing's guaranteed.
Yep.
Does your success feel like accumulative, or was there a big break? Like, is there something you can point to where you're like, oh, that's where it started to happen, and then that opens this door and that opens this door?
I do think the Chris Farley doc was a big break for us.
Right.
Because up until then, it was one kid with a camera doing pretty funny pop culture stuff. And then the next step is like, will the comedy world identify me as a real director?
Yeah.
That's the question. Will people validate this? Or is it just me? Is it just me making this? And to get commissioned to do the Chris Farley documentary was a huge step for me. I was very young. I was 27. So I'd only been filmmaking for 2 years.
Man.
And they throw that on your plate. And you're
okay,
like,
so but when you say they throw that on your plate, how do you get to that? Because people listening are just like, oh, what a Chris Farley doc falls in your lap. How do you get commissioned to do that?
The Brony Tale film got us commissioned to that.
Okay, so someone saw that.
Someone saw that. Network Entertainment, Derek Murray saw that. He's a producer. He has a company. They do a lot of films called I Am.
Yeah.
The I Am series. I Am Bruce Lee. I Am Steve McQueen. I Am Chris Farley was up next. They needed a young comedic director. Someone who could bring a story to it and bring some elements to it that felt younger. That was a huge hit for them. Like, we need someone who would get the Farley crowd.
Right.
And I had my hand up waiting to go.
Totally.
And honestly, it's like you get thrown into that, and I was freaked out. Like, I had never lit a scene.
Yeah, it's like fake it till you make it. It's like, yeah, I can do this, and then you're like, oh fuck.
Exactly. And also, it was fake it till you make it, but also like fake it, and they kind of know because they've seen your other movies. So, Derek's still a mentor and a great friend of mine because he gave me that chance. I'll never forget that. And it worked out. Like, the Farley doc is still the #1 doc on Paramount Spike TV that they've ever had.
It runs here on like the Movie Network all the time. Yeah, I literally watched it front to back, obviously, when it came out because I'm a huge Saturday Night Live fan. And then it's one of those things that if it's on like one of the 5 movie channels, you'll sit for 20 minutes. Just kind of pick up little pieces here and there. Yep. Were you a big Saturday Night Live fan?
Huge. I was a huge Farley fan too. Like, just Saturday Night Live, but Tommy Boy was.
Oh yeah.
It kind of changed. There's these movies that change your life. I really think that. And Freaks and Geeks is one. Tommy Boy's another. Superbad's another. And I don't know why. They're not classics. Right. They are in some sense. They are. Yeah. They're not The Godfather.
They've become classics, I think, for people of like our generation. You know, even in the moment, if we didn't know it, it's like those are beloved, pieces of entertainment. Yeah. So okay, you start doing this Farley doc, and are you able to get everybody right away? Like, is David Spade on board? Like, did they already have the infrastructure by which everybody was sort of like, yeah, we want to talk about Chris?
Not really. This one was really hard. Chris Farley died from a drug overdose. Yeah. And it had been years later, and no one had really talked about it for a while. And I think getting people on board for that is it's so much harder than celebrating a TV show that didn't last long on TV, like Freaks and Geeks. Right. It was about someone who passed away suddenly. We had the family on board. Remember, the first thing we did was we flew to Madison, Wisconsin. We got the blessings from his mom, Chris's mom, and his brothers.
His one brother wrote the book.
His one brother wrote the book, Tom, and
Which
then
I'd read.
yeah, and I had read it too.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and there was a lot more to the stories, which we wanted to kind of, you know, we really wanted to get at in the film. Kevin Farley jumped on board. He's one of the brothers, the younger brother. He jumped on board and he said, I'm going to help you guys. I'm going to exec produce this. And he really pushed, and he got Spade, helped us get Sandler. You know, Bob Odenkirk was a big friend. And that sort of, once you get a few of those guys, the rest will come.
Oh, well, that's what we found with this podcast. It's like when we started doing it over 100 episodes ago, it was like favors, like friends of Max. It's like, okay, we'll get Light. So we'll get, you know, Men Over Steeg from Colorado and his wife Annie. But then once, I remember we got Josh Groban. And he was the first legit person we got like through here that was like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. And then it's like, you know, for any publicist, it's like, oh, they did it. And then, you know, you get Scott Whalen from Stone Temple Pilots. And then those names kind of add up. And then everyone's like, oh, it's legitimizing, which is a word you used earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's legitimizing. Also, like, it's just a breadth of work. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's a quality breadth of work. And as soon as you start doing that, people will jump on because they have a track record of what they've seen before. And this is the thing, you guys just started doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's incredible. And it's the same as, did you think you're going to be a podcast host?
No.
Right? It's
Absolutely
like,
not.
you're incredible at it. And the reason is because you've been doing over 100 episodes.
Right.
And you just decided to do it. And I think it's the same with us in documentaries. We just said, there's something here and no one's doing this. No one's doing comedy docs.
Yeah.
Like, why is there no, you know, there's socio-political docs. There's a ton of true crime documentaries. Why is no one making fun of the world right now? Why is this like, why are we so serious with documentaries?
Yeah.
Can we try like just being funny? Like, the real world is so funny. Let's do this. And I found that's it. It's like, well, if we're going to do an iconic film, Chris Farley's the icon. If we're going to do a historic film, Freaks and Geeks is kind of my history. That's what I want. What's a food documentary look like? What's a music doc look like?
Yeah.
So we're just sort of, you know, dabbling in that world now.
With I think it was my friend Dan Carruthers, who I believe you know. He mentioned that Adam Sandler was like the last guy you got. I heard the like picture was almost locked, and then you were like, "No, we're redoing this if we can get Adam Sandler."
It was actually Adam and Lorne Michaels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, who opens the whole film.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler was on the third to last day before delivery, and no joke, Lorne Michaels came in the day we were supposed to deliver. And we emailed Spike TV at the time and said, can we have a 1 day extension? But yeah, we got it in, injected it, and just cut out Lorne Michaels and threw him in.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not a timing thing like they meant to do this. It's just schedules.
Yeah, it's just the way it goes.
Just the way it goes. And by the time I got around to Lorne's desk, he said, oh, Spade's in this, Sandler's in this, everyone's in. I absolutely will make sure that I, you know, pay tribute to Chris Farley, which is what it was.
Well, speaking of that, how cognizant were you, or I guess because his brother was exec producing or whatever, of sort of going light on the issues, his substance abuse issues, and sort of focusing more on the work, I guess?
You know, it's still to this day is like a conflict within me of, did we say enough? Did we say too much?
Fascinating.
Right? And I think it always will be because...
Well, even as a viewer, you know, yeah. I'm thinking that, and as a guy that obviously works in this industry, I'm like, I wonder how they're going to handle this and how much they're going to go there. And it's also, whenever you see it's exec produced by a family member, it's like you can handle things delicately.
Yeah.
So you found that a challenge?
I did find it a challenge. Look, drug addiction is so complex, and we like to sum it up. We really do. I think there's this like idea that, you know, someone's an addict and then they overdose and they die. It's like, no, there was like crazy struggles where at some points there were friends that at a young age and then they weren't friends anymore. There was family members that disconnected. There's a lot of stuff that happens. And if you're in the spotlight, like the Farleys were and Chris Farley was, it's even more complex. And they're a small town from Madison, Wisconsin. It's like, there's a lot more to this. But in terms of his story, I always ask myself, like, where does Chris live within people? Is he the guy that died too early? Is there a legacy status here? Like, he is, to me, a huge comedy legend, and I wanted just to make sure that was it at the end. Like, if anything goes right with this film, it's that we remember Chris as a legend.
Yeah.
We remember the great things he did, and so I always veered that way. But I don't think we shied away from it. You know, and a lot of these guys wanted to talk about that. I remember Bob Odenkirk being really firm on saying, you got to make sure this stuff goes in. Like, I really want to talk about addiction.
Let's be real about this
Let's be real about this.
Actually, I thought Mike Myers was fantastic in your film.
Mike Myers he's still, I think, my favorite interview I've ever done.
He was great. Like, you got a lot of really good stuff out of him about Farley. That was, because I felt like he came at it, you know, everybody, like guys like Sandler and Spade were like his friends.
Yes.
And Myers was like, it's, you know, they worked together and there was a mutual respect, but I don't know like how close they were. So it was almost a different perspective of like a mutual respect of like, yeah, this guy's an all-star, I'm an all-star, we work together, he makes me laugh. But you know, I don't know how close they were necessarily.
Yeah. And you know, Tom Arnold too, a huge friend of his, and they have dinner party stories where exactly Mike Myers, it wasn't like that. It was SNL stories. I don't know if they hung out outside of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, nobody came in and said that Chris Farley wasn't the funniest guy in the room. Like every single person said, that's the funniest. Like we're all funny, and they are very funny. For Mike Myers, who I think is so funny, to say I had nothing on Chris Farley is, you know, it just shows that this is a film that needed to be made. I was so happy making that movie. Like I was meeting these guys. I'm 27 at this time.
Yeah.
And like I will never forget that Mike Myers interview ever. Like I'm sitting there. It was one of those moments where I had like an out of body experience. I'm like, I'm interviewing Mike Myers. Like this is I'm a filmmaker now. Like I am a legit documentary director, and there's 10 people around me, and that guy's doing the lighting, and that guy's doing the filming, and they're listening to me. Like this is happening. I remember that. I will never forget that moment.
I mean, out of all those guys that you interviewed, very funny people, is there an anecdote or anything that stood out?
In the Farley doc, you know, I think Mike Myers, for me, the thing that stood out the most is that he really he wasn't hamming it up. It wasn't like I should be here because Chris Farley is probably good for my brand as well. Like he really truly missed a guy. He came in and said, I'm so sad that we're here right now and having to talk about this. I'm like, wow, he really cares. Like this guy really cares. And when he sat down, he was like choking up. And that to me indicated that it's more than just show business for some of these guys. Like, you know, there's friendships and there's a lot of time together and there's a lot of like moments that they share. So there wasn't any particular lines though that really stood out. Just the whole atmosphere of how they felt about Chris.
So now getting to the Freaks and Geeks documentary, that show just means so much to people. You know, it's like, it's obviously its stature and sort of legend and the place it holds in people's hearts has grown over the years. And I'm actually kind of surprised no one's made a doc because everybody, you know, you guys talked about the tree last night. Yeah. That tree that branches off from there and under Judd and Paul Feig is phenomenal. And so I would think that somebody at some point would have thought, shit, we need to go back and mine this. Like everyone that came out of this became ultra successful.
Yeah.
Were you surprised that no one had thought to do it?
I was completely shocked when there was no Freaks and Geeks doc. Same with Farley. How isn't there a film made here? And that's a lot of the time how we approach these films is like, it's a question first of how has nobody told us the Freaks and Geeks story? How do we not know how this show got canceled? There's so many unanswered questions to Freaks and Geeks. It's like in 1999, it was one of the lowest rated shows on TV, so it got canceled. Yet in 2005, it got a DVD release, which is unheard of for a canceled show. And then in 2013, it gets picked up on Netflix as if it's a brand new show.
Yeah.
It's on the top 100 Time Magazine, best series of all time, top 50 Rolling Stone. I'm like, what? How is this a thing when it got canceled after 18 episodes? What went wrong? And there's barely any articles about that. There's like one oral history, which was done very well by Robert Lloyd, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And it's just the actors and the creators that have continued the narrative of Freaks and Geeks and keep talking about it in every interview. And it was Judd who did a New York Times article on Girls the last season, and there's a whole paragraph on how much he misses Freaks and Geeks. I'm like, this is it. This is the doc. We have to do this.
What are the conversations like? So walk me through from you're like, we have to do this. Yeah. And you said last night that I guess Judd Apatow had seen the Chris Farley doc.
Yeah.
And so he'd sort of said something to you?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this, but Chris Farley was meant to be Cable Guy.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey's role, which would have been a very different Cable Guy, I think, if it was Chris Farley. Judd Apatow produced that film, and so they had a connection. They were friends. You know, I heard that they used to go for dinner all the time. We wanted Judd in the Chris Farley doc. We wanted to interview him. That didn't work out, scheduling. And he reached out and said, I'd love to see the film. And we said, yeah, for sure. Here's a link. I couldn't believe it. Wow, Judd Apatow wants to see our film. Great. Yeah, absolutely. You get him the film. And then he sent me just the nicest response about it and saying, it's very sad, very, very great to watch this. I think you did an amazing job, summing up the magic of Chris Farley.
Yeah.
And so left it at that. That was a couple of years ago. It was great. We've stayed in touch here and there.
Like you'll shoot him an email?
Yeah.
It's funny because when you have these connections, it's always like, you can't just be like, hey, Judd, what's up? It's like, it's like we always talk about like bullets. It's like you can't waste too many bullets.
Right, exactly.
So like, what would you talk about? Like, what would you email about?
I sent him one of my other movies that we had done, a comedy doc with Aubrey Plaza about her rec league basketball team.
Yeah, man.
Pistol Shrimps. And I said, what do you think? I just, I like you. I still think if you're making things, you want validation forever. And that sometimes comes from huge bigwigs like Judd Apatow, and sometimes it comes from your dad, and sometimes it comes from the people around you that just work with you. Sometimes it comes from yourself, but I think validation is super important. And
I think for a lot of creatives, I mean, maybe you don't want to admit it, but it's kind of like why it's not why you do it, but it's like, my God, I mean, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, you want to, yeah, absolutely. You want to entertain people. And I think sending it to Judd and having him comment on it at that point of the vulnerability of that film and where it was at was a huge thing for me. He just sent a couple messages back. This is great. It's very funny. Like, just continued a conversation with me. And then when Freaks and Geeks came up, I went to him and said, we really want to make this film. And no hesitation. He said, yeah, absolutely. You have my blessing. You just have to convince Paul Feig. And I didn't think that meant anything. I thought, like, yeah, we'll convince Paul. It didn't take too much, but I will say, like, it is very near and dear to Paul's heart because it's personal stories.
So he's a little more protective of it.
Sure. And so he didn't want it wasn't as quick as just saying, yeah, we're good to go. And then you have to get A&E, you have to get funding, you have to work it like a business. You have to figure out how you can actually getting their blessings is one thing.
But I mean, you can then go to the money people and say, well, we have Judd and Paul,
yeah,
and that will lead to Seth and James and all of that.
Exactly, yeah. Or you can go to Judd and Paul and them and say you have the money people. You can make a business out of it. So it worked. And I mean, it worked in the sense that they trusted us to tell the Freaks and Geeks story.
Yeah.
And that was great.
Okay, so walk me through the conversation with Paul. Is it just emails back and forth? Does he go, let me see some of your work? Like, how do you convince him?
Paul Feig was so... This is why I love being Canadian, because everyone has a Canadian story. His mom's from Windsor.
Yeah.
And our sound guy's from Windsor. We automatically had this, like, in. It was like a passport to Paul Feig because of Windsor, Ontario, which is so funny to think. Like that's what got you the Freaks and Geeks talk. He was into it. And we had a quick email exchange back and forth. And then he told me some stories. He told me some people I definitely need to talk to, some of the writers and different people. And then we just did our homework. And I believe we showed them the tree pretty quick. This Freaks and Geeks seed being the core and all the branches to where those actors have gone and how they've stayed connected. We did that, and we showed them sort of an animated PDF of what it could look like. And that kind of blew them away. So that I think they thought really quickly they were in good hands. And I know Paul said after his interview, he knew right away that this is the right film. This was the film that this is going to be the Freaks and Geeks doc. And then, yeah, everyone came after. It was not like Farley. It was very easy to get people because of Judd and Paul. It's like when mom and dad say yes, then the rest of the kids come.
So everybody sort of jumped on at that point.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, Judd, you had 4 hours of footage. Like, you talked for 4 hours.
You had a 4-hour interview, yeah. Maybe even 5.
Which is insane, you know? And I thought, like, everybody, like, again, like, I thought the doc was great. And everybody was distributed, like, really well. But, you know, when you said that, I was like, man, like, I know that obviously when you make these things, you can go long. But you'd mentioned in the Farley doc, it was like 35-minute interviews.
Yep.
That's what you got.
Sometimes less.
Yeah, of course.
20, 18-minute interviews, like whatever you could get.
Totally.
Right? Like,
and you'll make it work.
Yeah.
And so, Judd, 4 hours, like, I guess my question would be, what did he talk about that you didn't use where you were like, shit, that would have been great, but there just didn't fit? There wasn't a time, there wasn't a thread in the story?
First, to get 4 hours of Judd Apatow's time was like an absolute dream come true.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he was willing to sit and talk to us that long. And I think he got going. I don't think he meant to be there that long. But you know, we talked everything. I think we got really nitty gritty on the NBC details,
Right.
which are great, but
It's like inside baseball, which guys like us love that shit. But then for a
Yeah.
theater full of people that just loved Freaks and Geeks,
yeah.
you had the perfect amount of it in the film.
That's where there was a balance there where I think we could have gone way more into Nielsen ratings and
Yeah.
what those are and understanding why and how complex it was that Freaks and Geeks was getting 7 million viewers a day per episode, but they were the lowest rated show. You could go into all those details, but I don't think they're totally necessary for this film. Maybe for an extended cut or something later. And so that's one example. We have a few of the episodes in this documentary. The Garage Door, Kim Kelly's My Friend.
Absolutely.
Now, just times that by 18 because Judd talked about every single episode in
Wow.
detail. He just remembers and he knows, and it's so dear to his heart. Like so dear to his and Paul's heart. Paul's interview was 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like most of the guys that came in were hour, 2 hours, most of these actors and creators.
It seems like obviously everyone has a real fondness for that time in their lives. There's a lot of young people, and even like Paul and Judd. You know, Judd was a veteran, but you know, this was a project that meant a lot to them. Did they talk at all about like what they meant to each other?
Well, there's definitely a mutual respect. It's clearly obvious that they care about each other still,
Right.
because they keep using each other in their movies. But did they talk about each other? Yeah, they just talked. They talked about the talent brewing. It's like Jason Segel is a star. We can see it.
Yeah.
It's so obvious. In one day, he learned "Lady," the song that he plays for Lindsay in episode 15 or 16. He didn't know guitar. He just learned it in a day and then played the song. Like, wow, okay, so this guy's a star. This guy is going to be a massive actor. Franco, they knew. Seth was young, and they just watched him develop. Linda Cardellini, they said, never had one bad take in the entire show. Every single time they needed to cut away, they would cut to Linda Cardellini.
Yeah.
And I think there was just a crazy, and there still is a crazy mutual respect. I think they knew they were on this awesome rocket ship, and the rest of the world didn't see it.
You mentioned somebody gave you a box full of like DV tapes.
Yeah, so Paul and Judd had said, there's a guy named Gabe Sachs, and you have to go see him. He has some memorabilia from the show, is how they put it. And I went to his house in LA, and this guy had everything. He had a museum of Freaks and Geeks. He had the Norseman head. He had the Parisian night suit. He had a letter jacket. He had photos. And he handed me this box of mini DVs, an hour long. You remember those? Like,
Of course. I've got a couple boxes.
yeah. And he just said, no one's really seen this stuff. I know there's a rap party on there. You know, I know that there's some on-set banter, some writer room stuff. And it's just hundreds of hours.
Did you go through it all?
Yeah.
What I mean,
with pleasure.
yeah,
too,
honestly,
you know, like
you're
it's
seeing this archive of
it wasn't there wasn't a lot of pain when it came to the lugging of footage with this film, because it's incredible to see, you know, James Franco working on his lines, or Jason Segel talking about learning the song on guitar. Like these are things that no one's seen, and yeah, it was a pleasure working your way through these and marking them and understanding where they might fit in.
I wanted to ask the question. This is kind of like, I guess, process question, or just like as a filmmaker, but then also thinking marketing wise. When you're cutting the film and the story comes out about James Franco, right? And so it's kind of wrapped up in the Me Too thing.
Sure.
I don't know if the film's locked by this point or you're cutting it. Do you have a thought, like as a guy that's obviously putting this out, where you're like, shit, like, how does this reflect on the film?
Yeah.
Do we drop him out? Do we alter the cut, or do you just go, no, this is about Freaks? Like, how do you approach that when that happens?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I think the Me Too question. What a crazy time right now.
Of course.
And it came up for sure. Like as soon as everything came out about Franco, you do question like, wow, what's going to happen with our film? Are they going to put it out? Are they going to try to cut him out? Like all those questions came up, and discussions definitely came up. And it really came down to, this isn't the Franco story. This is the Freaks and Geeks story. He's part of that. Let's keep him in. Let's get this movie out. And we were finished. We finished last July. So it was already done, wrapped, and ready to go. I think it might have been a different conversation, potentially, if it hadn't been finished. I think every sort of pending project right now, when it comes to the Me Too movement, is to be questioned. And I think time will really tell what's going on with like it's not easy. It's not an easy subject, and there always is like a sort of PR pain to this sort of thing when you're making a movie. Like not always a Me Too movement.
Yep.
With Farley, it was an addiction thing.
Yep.
You know, we had to have a respect. Where do we lie with this? What are we doing? I think with Pistol Shrimps, it was an incredible group of women who were on a basketball team, and it's a powerful women's story. Am I, as a male director, the guy that should be telling that? You know, there's always
Absolutely.
sort of, right? And with Bronies, it was Hasbro. They own the My Little Pony franchise, and they were very weary at the time of the Brony thing. So you're always kind of like tiptoeing around what could help or hinder your film. And I think you just have to care about it and understand that there's a lot of different people that, you know, that have issues with certain things. Some people might be not happy that Franco's in this film, but I had to make a choice.
Yep.
And I think the choice is that he's a part of history here. He's a part of the Freaks and Geeks story, and he's in that story. That's that.
Yeah. Last night, you and Allie told what I thought was a funny story about Jason Schwartzman, because I was even surprised that Jason Schwartzman
I know
is interviewed for this film. What did he appear in one episode?
Yeah. So Allie and Allie's the producer, Allie Kelly.
She's in the room, by the way.
Yeah.
She's great. What's up?
We got to interview all of our like dream, you know, actors and creators. Judd Apatow, Jason Segel, Linda Cardellini. These are people that I really want to interview. And the idea that we could have Jason Schwartzman in the room for a minute was good enough. And the fact that he would come in to talk about Freaks and Geeks was just fine. And we knew he wasn't going to be a huge part of this film. I think he knew that. But as he said, if I can associate myself with a show like Freaks and Geeks, then people are going to, for whatever reason, think that I was on it the whole time. So I'm there. And he didn't know anything. He doesn't even remember his character name. He doesn't remember the show. But man, he was funny. And he was one of our last interviews. So we kind of had the film locked. So just to have him was just a bonus. It was like an absolute bonus.
It's kind of a delight. Like he shows up and you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like just throw him in there.
Yeah, it's like you get 45 minutes for free with Jason Schwartzman. And it's not like a contest that you won.
Right.
That's kind of how we felt. And he embraced it. He knew we loved him the second he came in. He just knew it. He knew that he had like stumbled upon just fanboys and girls that were just waiting for him to get in there. We talked about his brother and his brother's music with Rooney. We talked about his music.
Coconut Records.
I
love
talked
that,
about,
man.
We talked about Rushmore. We talked about Sloan. That's right. We talked
Sloan.
about everything.
Do you have any other, share an anecdote? What did he tell you about?
Yeah, I think
I love a good secondhand story, like a story that Jason Schwartzman's told that you guys will now tell.
Oh, that is really funny. Yeah, okay, that is really funny. He for whatever reason went on for about 20 minutes and told his first story of meeting James Franco, which was him walking his dog outside with a large Saturday Night Live T-shirt on and like a dress. And Jason Schwartzman saying he felt so small compared to Franco, who had come out in like a convertible, rolled up beside him and said, "Hey, congrats on getting in the film." And he said, "What film?" And he goes, "Oh, you don't know yet," and like sped off. And I guess it was Funny People. It was one of Judd's movies.
Sure.
And I guess Judd had told Franco, like, yeah, we're going to get Jason Schwartzman in this. And it was just one of those moments, I think, for Jason Schwartzman when he got invited into the club.
Right.
He got this like, wow, I get to be a part of the Judd club. I'm in a Judd movie. And he got to hear it firsthand from Franco, who sped by. And he's sort of like, he equated it to like, that's Hollywood, of like, it's me with my dog outside. And then this like the best looking actor in the world flies by in a convertible and tells you the best news you've ever heard. It's just like, I just loved his brain. You know, you just like, want in that brain for a second. You're like, man, you've done, and he doesn't think anything of it. He's like, yeah, I don't really get noticed much. I'm like, I've done some cool stuff. Like, man, you've done stuff that I think will go down in history. He's, to me, the next like Bill Murray, Christopher Walken. I think that's Jason Schwartzman. I think he's the next guy in line to be this
idiosyncratic, sort of weird, offbeat.
Mysterious dude. He's doing Wes Anderson stuff. He's somehow he's thrown himself into pop culture in a way that I just completely appreciate. I think the world of Jason Schwartzman. The other thing, he really likes LaCroix.
Really?
And we are very aggressively trying to get the LaCroix documentary picked up.
Really?
Yeah, because I think don't you have questions about what LaCroix is?
Yeah, we do. Actually,
like,
my wife and I love it.
Love it. Everyone loves it, and we don't know why, and we don't know where it came from, and we have no idea what artificial flavor is. And this is where we start with our movies. We go, why has nobody answered the LaCroix mystery? Let's go. Like that's the hard-hitting journalism that we love. And the thing with Jason Schwartzman is that he brought that up during his interview. He said, "What's that LaCroix documentary? Or no, what's that LaCroix story? I wonder where it came from." And I said, "We want to do the doc." And he said, "If you do that doc, I'll be a part of it." So I'm like, I am questing still every day to figure out a way to do the LaCroix story with Jason Schwartzman.
Yeah. Would you have him narrate, or would you?
I would. He will host. He will narrate. He will drink LaCroix. He'll do whatever he can. He's up for.
That's amazing. As we wrap up, I did want to know if there's anything overall in the documentary that you left out, because you got to kill your babies.
Yeah. What did we leave out of Freaks and Geeks?
I mean, Judd just did a giant comedy doc on Gary Shandling, obviously.
Yeah.
And I mean, he just went for it. That
Yeah,
thing's
he
like,
goes
what,
4
4
hours?
hours? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's a goal. Like Judd Apatow can get 4 hours to do.
If you're a judge, you can kind of do what you want. So if
Yeah.
he wants to do a labor of love that is 4 hours long, then
Yeah, he can have it.
So
I
be
mean,
it.
HBO will take it. And it's a great 4 hours too. I remember thinking like, wow, this is going to be a long 4 hours, and it's not. It's a great film. What did I leave out of Freaks and Geeks that we wish we had? There was a point where we were making the film that I said, if we don't get to hear from NBC, we haven't made the Freaks and Geeks doc. So there was Garth Ancier, who you'll see in the film, and he is the guy who canceled Freaks and Geeks. Until we had that interview, I didn't think we had a film. And then once we got him, it was like, yep, now we actually are really doing journalism here. We're seeing both sides of the story, and we have the people that love Freaks and Geeks, and we also have a complex reason why he canceled it. So until that moment, we didn't have a film. And then once we got it, I felt, regardless of what we have to cut, this is it. This is the Freaks and Geeks doc.
I totally agree. I thought having his voice was crucial just to sort of see the other, because someone's going to be like the villain. I'm doing air quotes for our listeners right now. But I thought he came off somewhat sympathetic, or at least you
Sure.
could understand his reasoning, because he's like, hey, this is business. And it wasn't delivering.
No, absolutely. Look, I respect Garth Ancier so much for doing this interview because everyone hates him for canceling the show. And he didn't have to do this interview. And he did. And he said, no one's really asked me too much about this, and I would love to tell my side of the story. And his story is valid. Yeah, he's an exec who has the lowest rated show on NBC. It's got to go. And I know that Judd and Paul realized that too. They've said that. Like, look, we weren't getting the ratings.
Yep.
But that didn't mean they were going to give up and switch it around. Paul said the other day that they were told they were supposed to have Britney Spears in an episode. They wanted Britney Spears to be like a cheerleader,
Sure.
and do a cameo, and
Wow.
they just said that's not what this is. And I mean, imagine in the year 2000 saying no to getting Britney Spears in your show.
Well, just the spike in that episode alone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And they said no. They said that's not what this is. And so they were going to go out with a show that mattered to them, regardless if the world cared about it or if NBC cared about it. And that's a learning experience.
For sure.
Paul was 35 and Judd was 32 when they were making Freaks and Geeks. I'm 32 right now. And I'm like, man, Judd Apatow was my age telling network execs to go fuck themselves.
Honestly, right? Like,
Right?
that takes balls.
Takes a lot of balls, and he's doing it for the power of a show. He's got a bunch of 16 to 18-year-olds' careers in his hand, and he's thinking, man, how do I keep them going? How do I keep this going? And look where his career's gone, and you look where Freaks and Geeks has taken people. But that moment as a 32-year-old, when your show gets canceled and you understand that an entire family of people now don't have a job, must have been a crazy pressure, which has probably led him to where he is now.
And if you're him, you don't know that the future is going to turn out
No, not at all.
spectacular.
No.
You could be like, this is the last time we all work.
That's it, exactly. And there's a darkness to that. There's like this weird terror to that as a somebody who is meant to constantly get shows picked up and provide. And I think I learned more from reflecting on that moment what I personally would have gone through. I think I actually learned more about filmmaking by just understanding what they probably had to go through and what they decided to stick to. We're going to stick to a show. We're not going to change the writing. We're not going to just do what people say. And I've just learned more about myself from their story than I thought it would.
Yeah. Have they seen it?
Oh yeah.
Has everybody seen it that's in it?
Yeah.
What's the word? What's the scuttlebutt?
That was like I actually have a photo of when Judd called me and said, even if you change nothing in this, it's the story. This is great. And it's just like what an incredible phone call to get out of the blue. I watched it with Jimmy Miller, his manager, which is like one of the coolest managers ever. He's Jim Carrey's manager. He's Will Ferrell's manager. We watched it together. He was there at the time. This is the story. And you're like, wow, what a validation. Like that is what we were trying to do here. I wasn't there, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And you hope that you get it right. So once Paul and Judd had seen it and gave me those kind of notes and said, this is it. I went for it. I was like, well, we gotta package this up and get it out to theaters and show as many people as we can. And it's still going. And it's like, it's cool. You know, what's really, really cool about it is that we're now part of the Freaks and Geeks story.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is that? We're part of the Chris Farley story. Like, that is unbelievable to me. Like, the fact that we've sort of continued the story on and a whole new generation gets to see it. And that's my life. Like, I'm a kid from Canada who now can say, well, Freaks and Geeks is part of me too now. Like, that's so awesome, just personally. It's so awesome. And I'm glad the rest of the world gets to experience it and love it. But, like, that's just a really cool feeling.
Thanks so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome to The Dessert. We are here joined by our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham, who is texting or typing something furiously.
We were just talking about rudeness with phones, and now I'm texting as you're introing me. But this is actually for the pod, obviously.
Hey, I'm not
Not
judging.
obviously, but I'm booking a guest.
Ooh.
It's our friend Rob Escula. Rob is running for council or something.
Oh, yes, I saw that. So for our listeners, one of our Champagne Boy friends, Rob Escula, announced in the Champagne Boys group that he is running for council, like a local, I guess, political seat in Hamilton, Ontario.
So it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, this is good. This
Yeah.
is exciting.
Is Dan Hamilton now his press secretary?
Yeah, him and Savelli are running the campaign.
Seriously?
Yeah, our friend Matt Savelli, who's a professor
Wow.
and Champagne Boy.
Well, it's kind of exciting.
We throw a benefit concert ourselves.
for Rob. Are you going to announce? Are you going to mention his candidacy from the stage at the
Maybe
rally?
I should.
That would be awesome if you played like Boss is Coming as he came up on stage to give like a speech or something.
He's wearing like an Escula 2019 shirt. That's awesome.
Yeah, but that's not what this dessert is about. I'm going to be throwing to another segment a la the J.R. Diggs episode where I talk to a blast from the past. I'm not sure if anyone listened to that last segment that we had on the Nirvana the Band Show episode.
Where everything's bleeped out.
What's that? What was
No, okay, never mind. Different thing.
I mean, you know, the J.R. Diggs campfire.
Yeah.
I don't know if people...
No, I was talking about the thing that was bleeped out during the Nirvana interview, but the segment you're working on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's something completely different.
Okay.
That's way bigger than this.
Okay, cool.
But what I'm going to be doing is talking to my friend Bert.
Oh.
And you might have, if you've been listening to the pod before, this is I won't call him an elderly man, but he's much older than me. He's in his 70s, and he was probably my best friend throughout my 20s. And I'm just going to catch up with him. I haven't talked to him in a while. And, you know, I think I told the story how we used to shower together at the Y. And he made
that was 2 episodes ago, maybe.
and he made me, well, not made me. He asked me to take my swim trunks off, and I obliged.
It's so weird.
Which I do think is right. Like, it is weird to be wearing the trunks. I didn't think it was like that egregious. But anyway, we're going to catch up with him right now. So hopefully it's interesting, and hopefully it happens because he was setting a lot of guidelines and rules because I think he thought the pod was a televised thing because he follows us on Instagram and he's unsure of what Instagram is or what a podcast is. So when I told him there wouldn't be cameras there, he kind of got turned off by that idea.
It wasn't as big time enough for him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, let's throw to that segment right now. What's up?
Yeah, what's up, Chief?
The reason I'm calling is to hopefully set up the podcast.
Let me think. You only have sound equipment, no film equipment.
No, we don't. The podcast is just audio based. Yes.
Just audio.
Yes.
Can we do it? I'm thinking. I don't want to do it here. Can we do it in a public place? No, not in a public place. No, then let's do it at your place.
Okay.
If we do it at my place, can we do it on the patio?
Yes.
When you arrive, then I can bring you up on the penthouse.
All right. Thanks, Birdie boy.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Yes, bye.
Do you want to start with the cheers?
Okay, cheers.
Let's clink these.
Wait, no, don't touch it. Yeah.
There we go. No, don't slam the mic against
Watch it.
Oh shit! Slam. Okay, there.
Drink first. Drink a little bit first.
There we go. So, long time no see.
Yeah, long time no see. That's life.
How old are you now?
77.
And when I met you, how old were you?
I was 64.
Wow, you're just a kid. Honestly, you look the exact same.
Well, it's good breed.
Yeah, it's true. Do you think I look similar or way different?
You look smarter now.
I look smarter.
Marriage does that to a person.
Were you surprised when we showed up?
Here, you mean?
Yeah, with the wife and the baby.
Oh, I knew you would have somebody who would drive you because that's the way you are. You're like somebody else to take you.
What is that, codependency?
Something like that. But it's more dependency than codependency.
Right. That's very accurate. Where do you, like, you have a bunch of documents here. You handed me a card when I walked in.
Yeah.
What did that card say on it?
My address, my phone numbers, home number, and my cell number. And it gives you my email. On the other side, it says, to watch my short films, go to YouTube. B. Van Lierop Short Films.
So wait, this is your business card?
It's not a business card. It's just a card to acknowledge that I have done some other things than supervising construction.
Okay, so these are the films, of course, you and I have made together.
Yeah, that's correct. 24 of them. And my favorite one is with Mike, the music video, Babe.
Oh, Baby, yes.
That's not Baby, Babe.
No, it was called Baby.
Ah, Jesus.
Don't argue me on that. Who do you give this business card to? Like, for example, if you're on vacation, do you give it to someone?
No, I give it to people I meet and say, are you interested in watching short films on YouTube? Here, watch mine.
Just strangers you just meet randomly.
Wild strangers.
And it's funny because you are the type to just talk to strangers, aren't you?
I'm easy at that.
And that's how we met.
That's correct.
Can you accurately describe how we met?
I remember that as the day of yesterday. You were at Tim Hortons on Fairview. No, on Plains Road.
Right.
And you were eating a blueberry muffin.
I was.
The blueberry muffin fell on the ground.
It did.
You picked it up and you still ate it.
What'd you say?
That must be one tasty muffin. And since then we have been making some short films. First we did Cops.
Yes.
You were looking for a guy with an accent. Of course I have Dutch accent.
Well, I was also more than an accent too. I was looking for someone who looked like someone of authority.
Older person.
A lot of short films, when you're younger, you cast someone and it's just your buddy and you're trying to say he's a police chief. But really, he's a 20-year-old. You, it's not just that you were older, it's that you actually look like a person of authority. You know what I mean?
I have always been a supervisor.
You have. So it was like method acting. You already had that because you're used to being the boss.
That's correct. And that was our first movie together.
How was that process of making that film and collaborating with me?
It was kind of difficult because in the beginning, I was not used to deliver long lines without... we didn't have much time, which wasn't easy. I got frustrated in that film.
Yeah, let's be honest, Bert. You were fucking up almost every single line.
That's correct. And in retrospect, I think it was good for the film.
It was funny for the behind-the-scenes footage. As for the film itself, it was a struggle, man.
Yeah.
We had to make cue cards for you.
When you get older, your memory starts to fade.
You weren't that old. Now you could play that card. You were only 64.
No. It was done after my retirement at the board.
So you were 65.
66.
Look at us fighting just like nothing's ever changed.
That's correct.
Okay, so after we did the film, would you say we became very close friends?
Yes, we came, and we accepted each other the way we were and the way we acted. I taught you how to learn how to drive stick shift a car.
Well, more than that, like my dad has kind of a temper. So I was always scared to ask for him to teach me things. I thought I was never going to learn how to drive. And then you said you would teach me, and I think I was 25.
That's correct.
When you finally taught me how to drive. And I wanted to go on a date with a girl and take her in a car. So you had gone out and just said, Shane, give me the money and I'll buy you this car. And I just trusted you. You just pulled up at my place smiling, rolled down the window and said, here's your car. And it was a stick shift.
And you didn't want it. You didn't want it because you wanted to have an automatic. And I said, no. Before you learn to drive, you have to learn to do a shift stick. Aren't you happy now? You know a little bit more than all the others.
Do you know who wasn't happy? The date I had to take out in that stick shift car because I was fucking horrible. I didn't know which gear to put it in. Like I only had a week to learn, and I'm not a very good learner. And it was stalling out. And
I taught you how to drive a car.
Do you know I once, on one of my first times driving it around, I stalled it on a train track and a train started coming?
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, it was. I had to get people to push the car off the tracks.
Anyway.
But I want to talk about where did we used to go together a lot?
We went to the Y.
The YMCA.
YMCA. We worked out fairly frequent, like 3 or 4 times a week.
You got quite buff.
Well, I've done triathlons till I was almost 65. So.
But will you admit that I helped sculpt your body?
Sure, we tried to outdo each other.
Yeah. And do you remember when we were in the change room and we were hitting the showers and you saw that I had swimming trunks on?
That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. If you go under the shower, then you go with buck naked.
Well, I was just scared of my shame.
Whether you're big or small or in between, doesn't matter.
But Bert, I snuck a peek, and yours was...
I'm Dutch.
You had... Is that a Dutch thing?
That's a Dutch thing.
Wow.
We're shaped pretty good, and that's Dutch.
Like, I took one glance, by the way. I don't want anyone to think I was staring at it.
Well, you did.
Well, hey.
Anyway, that's the past. We grew out of that.
What did we grow out of?
I lost my temper a couple of times with you, and you lost your temper a couple of times with me.
No, yeah, we would fight like cats and dogs over nothing.
Over nothing.
Nice, and we also made a documentary film together.
Delivery, which is on Netflix.
Because you did stand-up comedy once.
Oh, I did.
I want to talk about our tattoo.
I still have the tattoo, and it hasn't faked. It's still there.
Can you describe that tattoo?
It's a picture of me at 65.
What are you doing?
Thumbing.
Giving a thumbs up.
Giving a thumbs up at 65. The picture was taken and the tattoo was made after the picture.
And you also were wearing a Snatch TV t-shirt in it.
That's correct. At that time, we still were talking about Snatch TV. Has nothing to do with sex. It's snatching, it's grabbing.
Right. It's not about vagina.
No. No, it's not a snatch.
And make sure you're talking to the mic.
No, it's not a snatch.
Good, now that we have that nice clear audio. But that tattoo, if we can talk about it, caused controversy.
Yeah, my wife didn't like it. My kids didn't like it.
They didn't like me for...
You were the one who made me do it.
What? Is that true?
No. Basically what we said is, if you do the tattoo that you were making, then I will do a tattoo at the same time.
And do you remember the tattoo I ended up getting?
Teen Wolf.
I got Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox you did in color.
I did. And it was a portrait of Michael J. Fox ripping open his shirt, wearing a
That's
Teen
correct.
Wolf shirt.
That's correct.
And then you got a tattoo of yourself.
Yeah.
And then it kind of made your family not like me anymore.
No, you were a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very bad.
And then my family started not liking you.
That's correct. We didn't get any support from the parents' side. Not you, not me. No, I was too old.
So do you think that was the main problem?
Yeah.
Why do people think that somebody who's in their early 20s can't be friends with someone in their mid-60s?
People haven't grown out of the old ways. I feel young dealing with young people because it keeps me young.
Right. Do you have a lot of young friends now? Has there been a replacement Shane?
There's several young construction guys from the last job who still are having contact with me on Facebook.
Okay, do you remember what we used to smoke? What?
Unfortunately, you got me hooked on a little joint. And I left Hamilton And by the time I recognized that I wasn't going the right way, I was almost in Toronto.
Wait, you drugged drive?
Yes, and it was scary. You got me into this.
Bert, I was going to talk about the little cigars we used to smoke.
Oh, yes, yeah, but that was just cigars.
Do you remember the pranks we used to pull on drive-through employees?
Oh, yeah.
So we had this routine where I'd go through a drive-through and I'd be like, "Hey, dude, could I please have a burger, a chocolate milk, and an extra large fry? Thank you." And then I would hide in the back of the car.
Yeah.
And just you would pull up with your thick Dutch accent being almost 70 and just be like, "Hello." And they'd be like, "Are you the guy who ordered?" You'd be like, "Yes." And then they'd hand you the chocolate milk and you'd be like, "Took you long enough. What, were you milking the cow?"
That's
and
correct.
They'd be so confused at what just transpired. And then you would just squeal out.
Squeal out what? What did I squeal out?
The tires would squeal. It's not like you would
I
oink
would
like a
take
pig.
off. Yeah, I would take off. Yeah, of course. No, yeah, we did that every time we had to pick up something at the drive-through. We fooled them.
Are your weed smoking days behind you? Or are they just beginning?
Yes, and I tell you another thing. I have not touched the cigarettes anymore.
You don't smoke. I wanted to talk about Alex's birthing video. Like the video I put online.
Yeah, I would never share that. It's personal.
But Bert, do you remember when we looked at the video, your colonoscopy video, and we were taking a tour of your asshole? Like,
No, you never looked at my colonoscopy.
you showed it to me. You had it or something.
No, that was
Oh, your brain surgery.
my brain surgery.
Oh, I knew it was something that
No.
haunted
I
me.
had-
You don't think that's personal?
No, because that's medical.
Well, it's pretty medical. They removed a baby from my wife's
Yeah, but
tummy.
it's
Not to get all technical.
No, I don't want to get too technical about it either. The birth I would never share with anybody of any of my daughters, and I did help with the delivery.
What about someone offers you $1 million to share your birthing video? Cash.
Listen, at 77, what am I going to do with $1 million?
What aren't you going to do? At that point, that's money for life, baby.
Look around you.
Okay.
Am I suffering?
You're not suffering. And just for the audience at home, we are surrounded in a beautiful garden straight out of the movie The Secret Garden.
Yeah, no, not only that, the Mafia movie.
Which Mafia movie?
Don Corleone.
Oh, Godfather. I don't remember the gardening scene, but if there is one, it's better than that.
I still got another 10 years,
So you're going to live to be 87.
at least.
I like it. You have good genes.
Yeah.
And I actually like the jeans you're wearing right now. They're like a beige color. Did you dye? You used to dye your own jeans too. That was
Also, the blue jeans.
blue jeans.
Blue jeans. I would.
Blue jeans are fairly
Red-
ubiquitous. Why
red-
would you need to dye your own jeans?
They faded too far, and I didn't like it. And I give
Right.
them a little more deep blue color.
Yeah, and you dyed a couple pairs of jeans for me.
Yes, you're sure. You liked it too.
Yeah, it looked great. I don't know why, but I was down with it.
Yeah.
What do you prefer, Baby or the movie Delivery?
Delivery is a very special movie. Mark put a lot of thought into that movie. It took a long time to finish that movie.
Yeah.
Delivery is by far more important than Babe.
Okay. If you had to kill either Mark or me, like you're fairly honest, Bert. Like once you actually told me who your favorite daughter was, so
Yeah.
I'm trusting that you'll be honest with me. Who would you wipe off the planet?
I wouldn't kill anyone. I would hire the mafia to do it for me.
Who are you putting the hit out on?
It's a hypothetical
It's
question.
hypothetical, totally.
Hypothetical question.
Will never
and
come to happen.
And it will never come to happen, and it will never be heard by anybody that I would favor one or the other.
Nod your head if it's Mark, and shake your head if it's me.
No, I wouldn't do that. If I shake my head or nod my head, then I do both at the same time.
What's more valuable, money or time, to you?
To me, time is very important.
But if you had to pick money or time,
I would pick time.
to personify money or time, would you say Mark is more like time or money?
Mark is time.
And I'm money.
No, not really. I think you have almost a disregard for money.
What makes you think that?
Money never was up front with you the most important thing.
How could you tell?
Well, that's very easy. It's the way you reacted and the way you acted. money was a second nuisance.
Right, yeah.
You had that at a very young age that you distance yourself from money.
Yeah. Do you remember the one time? It was weird. You bought a lot of stuff for the movie.
Yes.
We were business partners to some extent.
Yes, because I still think that we had Snatch TV thing, where basically we had our own Snatch TV
Production company.
During which time all these movies were made.
Right. So it's not like you were just making or investing in me.
No.
They were for you also,
Oh,
right?
of course.
But at one point, I remember you asked for money back from me.
Yeah.
And you had all these receipts. And what did I do? I went to the bank and I got a money order and I gave you your money back.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had kept receipts, like Tim Hortons receipts on like Timbits and stuff.
I was pissed off.
You were. That was a crazy move, but I did it. And I wasn't mad at you.
Money is the least important thing to you.
Do you know what the most important is? Mike, how much?
And the daughter you got, that should be the most important thing.
Oh, yeah, her too. She's cute. And do you remember when we were shooting this skit, I had an idea that we would go skydiving.
Yes, we did that too. And for that, I took you to Flamborough, where there is a skydiving place. And we did both the training. And we were both going to go into one of these little planes 4,000 feet up and then jump out of it. Of course, you backed out.
So this was back in the day, by the way. I think this law has changed. But back in the day, you were allowed to do like 3 hours of skydiving training, go up in a plane, and actually jump out by yourself. It was untethered, meaning you
I was on my own.
You weren't attached to another man.
No.
Your first time skydiving.
I have a certificate even for it.
So we went up in the plane together, and as we're in the plane, I looked to the instructor. I go, "Is this safe?" And the instructor looked at me. He was like, "You're 4,000 feet in the air. We're about to go hurling out of an airplane. Is this safe? No. Follow your safety training, and then you'll be fine." And I was like, shit.
I jumped out of that thing, and I landed within 15 feet of the X on the ground.
I was scared.
You were scared shitless.
Right. Well, I remember my thought, too. I was like, Bert's like 60, in his 60s. He's lived a full life. Yeah. If he dies, that's fine. If I die, I'm still young.
That's very selfish, you know that.
Yeah, well, I figured you'd go out the way you wanted. Smashing into the grass at 8,000 miles an hour.
In charge.
In charge, yeah, exactly. Do you think your family would like me now?
Oh, time heals.
Like, if you ever die, could I go to the funeral?
Yes. Oh, yeah, you can come.
Okay.
You can
I don't want it to be awkward.
But I made that very simple.
And I don't think you will ever die, by the way.
No. I made it very simple. If I die, I want to be cremated. The ashes have to go to the horse barn on the manure spreader. Mm-hmm. And the family can walk behind the manure spreader and they spread it all out over the field.
That's kind of a shitty way to die.
No, that's back to earth.
I like that. And lastly, Teen Wolf 3. How would you describe that experience?
Well, Teen Wolf 3 was in relationship to the tattoo you have on your arm. It was a parody on
Teen Wolf.
Teen Wolf.
And it was a short film.
It was a short film. And what's the guy's name you had on one of your shows?
J.R. Diggs.
Yeah, Diggs.
What do you think of J.R. Diggs?
He's an asshole.
No, but tell me what you really think of him, Bert.
I think that is very clear what I think of him.
Okay.
I think he is... There are certain people who establish nothing. He's one of those.
Because we made Teen Wolf for J.R. Diggs' show.
That's right. And what did he do with it?
He aired it on his show.
How many times?
A couple times. Weren't you looking at it as like a mutual beneficial relationship, as he had the nationally televised show and he was giving us exposure?
I questioned that.
Whether it was even airing on television.
That's right.
That's an interesting conspiracy theory. And come to think of it, I don't know if I ever really saw it on TV.
No.
It didn't air?
No.
Shit.
But I hated freeloaders like Diggs.
J.R. Diggs.
He is a dick.
J.R. Dickhead.
Anyway.
Did you like how the film turned out?
I think it was a fabulous parody on the original.
Is that a fancy way of saying no?
No, it's a fancy way of saying that I think it was good. It was done well.
Would you advise people to check it out on YouTube right now?
That's part of the movies that are on YouTube.
And we started working for Home and Garden Television, a show called Housecapades with Mike Bullard.
Oh, yes.
Could you
Yes.
describe that?
There's another typical loser in the business.
Who's that?
Bullard.
Mike Bullard.
Yeah. What is he doing now?
Don't know. I know he got in mild trouble recently, or maybe major trouble. I haven't followed
He
it.
has been in trouble for as long as I know him. When I talk about him, I think about Dick.
you mean Diggs?
Yeah.
If you had to kill one of them, who would you rather kill?
I'd rather kill them both at the same time.
Wow.
They're useless.
But that's neither here nor there.
So I don't know whether you can air this.
Yeah, hey, this is a cool pod, man.
Yeah, no, but I had no respect for both because they didn't really produce anything that was important or very special.
Right. Well, he had a late night talk show.
Did you listen to him quite often?
I watched it from time to time, and it is hard to do that.
If I passed his channel, that's how much I heard from him.
Wow. Okay, but
I wouldn't listen to him, not even if I got paid for it.
But they hired us.
Well, how much did we make?
Didn't we make $2,500 per episode?
Are you kidding?
What?
I have never seen the 2,500.
I cashed the check, Bert.
You did cash the check.
I
What did
swear we
get?
split it. Even Stevens.
I can't remember.
I swear, Bert.
I can't remember. And have we ever heard from him since then?
We haven't.
No.
Did you like the work we did for them?
No.
Okay, and I have to talk about this because this is a huge part of your film and television career. You were a recurring character on the show MTV Live.
That's because I played the role of Samuel
L.
Jackson.
So you were Samuel L. Jackson.
Actually, we were in the green room with Quentin Tarantino
All because we had made a parody of
on
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. And I was sitting in the audience there, made up in black with black curly hair.
Black curly hair. Were you in blackface also?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And MTV aired that.
MTV aired that. I'd been on that show several times.
And so they liked you so much from this one-off appearance as Samuel L. Jackson that they'd had you come back for multiple episodes.
I've been a couple of times there, yeah.
And how did you like that experience?
Well, they were using me. It's very simple.
But were you getting enjoyment out of being on this national show?
I did in the beginning, but finally I had enough of it.
Too much fame.
Yeah.
Too much fame too quick.
I remember that you and we watched this film festival in Toronto, and we walked late at night during the street, and
Yeah.
people were screaming at us.
Hey,
They
Bert.
recognized me.
I do. People, and I was offended because no one recognized me. They only recognize you.
That's right.
Did your employer care that you were in blackface?
No,
Oh.
no, they had nothing to do with it.
But I guess you were so tan, a lot of people couldn't tell anyway.
That's one thing.
How often do you still go tanning?
No, the odd time.
Don't lie to me, Bert. You're
No,
still
no,
so dark.
But the odd time I go, I haven't gone to a suntan place for a year and a half.
Would you say you used to be addicted to tanning? Honestly.
That's very simple. If you look good, people think you feel good.
That's kind of depressing. People think you feel good.
People think you feel good. In the end, you feel good yourself as well.
Okay, I'll ask again. Would you say you were addicted to tanning? That being said,
Not addicted. I liked it, but I wasn't addicted to it.
you could quit at any time.
Yeah, I quit now for a year and a half.
Were you ever addicted to smoothies?
No, smoothies. I'm not addicted to them at all.
And that's a line from?
That's the line we used for Teen Wolf 3.
Yes, you die in that film. What gives you so much joy in your film and television career? Why are you so proud of it?
I don't know whether I'm proud of it. It's something.
Bert, you carry around a card that you tell people to go check out your short film.
Oh, yeah,
it's your
because-
business card.
Because people might have fun with it. They might laugh about it.
It seems like you're fairly proud, though.
Oh, I don't regret it.
And do you have any regrets about how our friendship went?
No, it cooled off for a while, and then people asked me, are you making more short films? And I told them, I said, I don't want to.
You would never would.
No, not anymore.
Why is that?
I'm getting too old for this shit.
You love that line.
No, getting too old.
So if I begged you to make another short film, you wouldn't help me out?
If you would ask me to jump from the Empire State Building, I would say, well,
Man, That's very touching, actually.
Yeah.
All right, Bert.
Okay.
We good?
Yeah.
What'd you think of that?
Oh yeah. It's material for the editing table.
No shit. That's it. That's all. That is our episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Brent Hodge. Go see Freaks and Geeks, the documentary. We loved it, and we hope that you enjoy it too.
The Mike on Much podcast can be found on Instagram and Twitter at Mike on Much. Huge thank you to Tara Paquette and Jenna Gregory for putting together the artwork. Shout out to Justin Stockman, Webby D, and manager Ash, and the whole gang, Greg Stewart, Mike McShane, everybody for helping put this thing together.
You know it. And thank you to the listeners, everyone that tunes in every week and follows along with us. The Mike on Much podcast is produced by Max Kerman. I'm your host, Mike Vierman. See you next week if we don't die on the weekend.